until you fit into their shoes, and will her shoes ever fit? And anyone who has tried to borrow shoes from somebody else knows that rarely, once a shoe is worn, does it ever fit anybody else, including Cinderella. So, what is our perspective in Yiddishkeit about judgment and about judging others, and how should we approach a world where we very easily and quickly see people, and the first thing we see is what they look like or what they're doing, and not judge? And it truly is a tremendous challenge. I learn the most from my students, as Chazal teach us, mitalmidei yoser mikulam. And I love opening this year with this line because one of my students just said it so simply last year. We were talking about the Holocaust, and very, very commonly, whenever the Holocaust is discussed, the line used about Holocaust survivors is, this person survived the Holocaust and they became very angry, they're not from, but we don't judge. We always give the Holocaust survivors, and they should live, as many of them are still alive, they should live and be well. We like to give them that blanket excuse of, but we don't judge. And so we were discussing the Holocaust, and we were discussing some of the repercussions, and she just raised her hand and she said, Rebbetzin Feiner, we don't judge anybody. And I said, you're right. We don't judge anybody. And that is not an easy order. Rabbi Hanoch Teller typically says, and if you've heard this line from him, I just enjoy it, so I love to share it again and again. He says, whenever you meet somebody, and this weekend we all met a lot of people. I saw people last night at this weekend that I hadn't seen all Shabbos. I mean, there kind of are a lot of people here. And whenever you meet somebody, he says, what you need to assume is you're meeting them at chapter 2. And there's a chapter 1, and you don't know what chapter 1 was. So that now that you're meeting them, it's chapter 2, and you have to assume that there's a whole long story that took place beforehand that you are not privy to. And of course, the source of this in Chazal is the Mishnah in Avos, where Hillel tells us, and of course Hillel's the one who loves everybody, so he's the one who's going to teach us this. He says the following: Al tifrosh min hatzibor, do not separate yourself from the community. V'al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ela ad yomoscha, and do not believe in yourself until the day you die. V'al tadin es chavercha ad shetagia limekomo, and do not judge your friend until you reach their place. Very interesting. Rabbeinu Yonah says, this is building on the fact that don't believe in yourself. Don't believe in your own knowledge. Of course, don't think you know better, because lefisha eincha yodea, you do not know ma yelid yom, what will come in a day. So the one previous said don't believe in yourself until the day you die. You don't know what's going to come into your life, and just like you don't know what's going to come into your life, you can't predict what you would be if you came into his situation. And everything changes. And life constantly changes, and situations constantly change, and people constantly change. And there is no way that you can predict what you would be if you were in his situation. However, when looking in Rav Dessler, this blanket statement of we can't judge anyone, I think is better explained. And Rav Dessler on this Mishnah says to us, what does it mean, makomo? Do not judge your friend until you're in their place. What does it mean to be in your friend's place? So we said fit in their shoes, be in their place, whatever that may mean. But he defines their place as 4 aspects. What does it mean, my place? On a funny note, somebody still just met me yesterday and said to me, don't you live in Yerushalayim? And I love when people ask me that, because it's unfortunately already been over 7 years that I'm living in America. But you can be in one place and your heart can be someplace else. And my heart still certainly is in Yerushalayim. So what does it mean to be in someone's place? And Rav Dessler defines it as 4 things. To be in their place, you need to have their nefesh, their soul, their seichel, their intellect, their matzav, their situation, and their sviva, their surroundings. Essentially, it's impossible to be in somebody else's place. It's impossible. Only each individual has that combination of their soul, their intellect, their surroundings, and their challenges are so unique to them that there's no way you could ever be in somebody else's place. And that's why only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually called Makom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Ha-Makom when we comfort mourners. The place. In our Pesach Seder, we sing about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we say, Baruch Ha-Makom, blessed be the Makom, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only place, the only one, the only being God is, who can be in every place. He can be in everyone's situation. He understands the place of every person. Nobody else is in any Makom. In fact, the example that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Rav Dessler gives, is even the greatest Navi, and we say every day, Lo kam b'Yisrael k'Moshe od. There never was a Navi like Moshe Rabbeinu. And I love a call and a cheer for women. When did he totally judge wrong? The Benos Slavchad. And he misjudged them, and he criticized them. He sent them away. And Hashem says to him, no, no, no. Kain Dovros. I know what they're saying. And what they're saying is just and true. Because a person only sees what the eyes see. And just to quote the pasuk directly, Rav Schwab Zatzal brings this down in Shmuel, where it's talking about Shmuel Aleph Tes Zayin, where Shmuel Hanavi goes to anoint the next king of Israel. And the pasuk says there, the pasuk says in Shoftim that Hashem will appoint a Navi. And the Navi, the pasuk says in Yurches Tesvav, Umikir b'cha me'achecha kamoni yakim l'cha Hashem Elokim. Amongst you, from you, God will appoint a Navi. You'll have a Navi from amongst you. But when he gets to the house of Yishai, and that is in Shmuel, what happens? He looks around. And Yishai has all these tall, handsome, strapping sons. And he's sure that one of them must be the next king. And Hashem shows him, no, 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 none of them. Even Masu Havarim Haisalarosh Pina. That son that nobody liked, that little red-headed one, he wasn't so little, the youngest one, that's the next king. And the pasuk says in Shmuel Aleph Tes Zayin, Ki ha'adam yireh la'einayim, because a person sees with his eyes. The Hashem yireh la'levav. Only Hashem can see what's in somebody else's heart. Only Hashem can see what's deeper than what the eyes see. And says Rav Schwab, and then I want to go back to Rav Dessler. How often, and we can think of personal examples in our own lives, do we meet somebody and we think from the outside, oh, this person looks so strange. This person looks so, he uses the word mechuar, ugly. Nobody's ugly in my eyes. But this looks so horrible. This person looks strange. They look weird. They look different. And you talk to them. And you find somebody so beautiful inside. And you find somebody so precious inside. And lehefech, have we ever seen somebody who looks so beautiful, and in a second, in talking to them, they become so ugly in our eyes? Because they're mean, they're cruel, they're nasty. Ha'adam yir'eh la'einayim. A person sees with eyes. Rak Hashem yir'eh la'levav. Only Hashem can see what's in somebody's heart. Only Hashem can plumb deeper into the depths and actually see what's in a person's heart. And I want to divert for a second. Because of that, and we're going to go back to this point when we go on, but Rav Dessler brings it up here, we have to be very careful. Because although we're cautioned not to judge, we are taught, and we are told, and we are given the responsibility as parents and as educators to sometimes give musar. We are supposed to sometimes give musar, and we must note that when we give musar, how are we giving musar? We're only giving musar on what was nira la einayim. We have to be careful when we give it. I'll share with you one of my favorite stories of growing up. I grew up in a small town. Wherever I grew up, you might think of who the Rebbetzin is. It's not even a bad story, but I had gone to Eretz Yisrael, to seminary. I came back, a good girl, quote unquote, and it was Aseres Yimei Tshuva, and I was driving down one of the streets, and I saw one of my high school teachers, a Rebbetzin, and I pulled over the car to say hello to her. And she said to me, Aviva, I'm so happy to see you. I've been thinking of you ever since Rosh Hashanah. And I said, why? Okay, we're talking 22 years ago. I said, why? She said, I saw you on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and it looked like you were wearing lipstick. And it's been disturbing me. She said it very lovingly. Very lovingly, very lovingly. She said it like that. And I said to her, I don't do anything special. I have no special tricks, and I don't use any special makeup or special lipstick, and I don't know why the reason is, but it just didn't come off. It stays on me very well. Really? Wow. But I think she was in her right place to ask me. Because the flip side of this is we are meant to be careful never to do something that might cause maras ayin. We recognize that Adam yir'eh la'einayim. People do see. And this is a typical argument that I have with my seminary girls all the time. What does it matter if I dress this way? Why should people think I am this way if I dress this way? Because the way you present yourself is what people are going to see. Ha'adam yir'eh la'einayim. We do see. And yet, at the same time that we do see, and at the same time that we may criticize, and I'm going to go back to this point later on in the shiur, we have to realize that we only see la'einayim. We are seeing what they're presenting to us, but we only see la'einayim. Rak Hashem yir'eh la'levav. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can see in the heart. And we have to assume, we have to really assume, and going back to that original point of chapter 2, that even the people who are closest to us, anachnu rak roim la'einayim, we just see to the eyes. And how often are we quick to judge, especially those who are close to us? Do you know why? Do you know what happened? Do you know what was in chapter 1? And it's amazing. It's amazing that we're faster to judge everybody in the world. And we're faster to judge the people who are closest to us. And in that, with that mindset, with that knowledge, we have to play with our heads. Because it is true, I did just say, people do represent themselves a certain way. People are doing something that makes them look like they are very pious or very wicked, so to speak. If one would see someone who they know, who seems to be an upright and God-fearing religious person, walk into a non-kosher restaurant and order food. We're seeing that happening. Do we have a right to question? Still, there is a famous story, and I think it's in maybe a Rabbi Krohn book, about the person who saw someone eating in a non-kosher restaurant, and it turns out they had some sort of stomach condition that they really needed to eat something right away, so they ran into that restaurant. But we do see, and we see something that's wrong. Are we not going to judge anything at all? And sometimes, again, we need to criticize. Says my husband, Rabbi Feiner, the Mishnah in Avos has many, 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 many different pieces of advice that it gives to people when it comes to social etiquette and social propriety. How does it open? It opens with Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. It opens with the whole Masorah, and then it starts with what Anshe Knesses Hagdola would teach. And what would they teach? The first thing that it lists is Haim Amru Shlosha Devarim. What's the first of the three things listed in all of Pirkei Avos? Heve Misunim Badin. Be exacting when you judge. And the Bartanura says something beautiful on the word misunim. Misunim means to be exacting, but the Bartanura says the word misunim is very closely related to the word mamtinim, which means to wait. Be slow to judge. Be cautious to judge. Wait. Think. V'heve done es kol ha'adam l'kaf zechus. What we need to try to put in there, if we could imagine to ourselves, again, we're not God, put in more of the picture. Kol ha'adam, all of the person. What might make them act that way before I speak to them? If I'm in the position where I'm the person that should be speaking to them. And maybe I'm not, in which case I'm not going to speak to them, and I'm just making that judgment in my head, which we all do. What is this whole picture? Maybe I don't know it. Maybe I can fill certain things in my head, but I should be mamtinim. I should wait. And he says, the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, and he quotes Rabbi Rucham Lubavitch, that the pasuk says, "Kipatish yifotze tzela," like a hammer breaks a rock into a million shards. So too, everything we see has a million reasons. We don't know. We have to be mitzunim. We have to wait. We have to be careful. And he says, why aren't we careful? This is going back to Rav Dessler. Why do we walk into a room and we size everybody up? And we're quick. One of the most powerful messages that Mrs. Greenblatt said last night at Our Lady's discussion, stop judging everyone. This person's in this situation because they did this and this and this. And this person's in this situation because they thought that and that and that. Why are we so quick to judge? And he says something so painful but so honest. The rush, the need to judge others unfavorably. He says, Lir'os chesron chaveiro, to find what's chaser in your friend. That need comes from, the shoresh is the person who's miskabed beklon chaveiro. That I can lift myself up from that other person's shame. Because they're like that, and I'm not. And I would never do that if I was in that situation, and that would never happen to me. It's the miskabed beklon chaveiro, as I heard Rev. Ephraim Waxman say once, and it's such an amazing analogy because it's so realistic. What's the miskabed b'chlon kaveiro? You're in the schoolyard and everybody's playing, and there's this little short kid and he feels like nothing. So you know what he does? He kicks his friend and he knocks him down and he stands over him and he says, I'm bigger than you now. That's the miskabe biklon chavero. That somehow, when I'm judging them negatively, when I'm making that judgment call, it's picking me up. It's making me feel better. It's giving me something to feel more confident about. And that is such a, I would call it a pithy, pathetic place in a person. That poor kid in the schoolyard who needs to knock somebody else down to pick themselves up. So before I judge somebody else negatively, I have to ask myself, where is this coming from? Why do I need to put them down? And he says the antidote to that is, who taught us? Al tadines chavercha ad shetagia lemkomo. Hillel Omer. Hillel also says, Havei mi talmidav shel Aaron. Be among the students of Aaron. What does Aaron teach us? Love everybody. If you loved Klal Yisrael, says Rav Dessler, you wouldn't be judging so fast. If you really loved them, if you felt that way towards Klal Yisrael, you wouldn't jump into the judgment. You wouldn't let your head go that way right away. You'd want to find the best reason as to why they're displaying, even if it's an unobjectively negative behavior. You'd want to find the reason why you want to love them. Just as somebody pulls in your own kid and they tell you, this is what your kid did in the streets. How fast do you try? It's your own child. Maybe this happened. Maybe this is why they did it. Maybe that's why they did it. I have to love everybody in Klal Yisrael. It's my child. It's my brother. It's my sister. I'm looking to bring out the best in them because I love them. Because I want to find that place in me, and that really picks me up. That need to fill me with positivity by putting other people down is a need that can never be satisfied because it's coming from a negative place. But when I'm lifting up others, when I'm picking up others in my heart, when I'm giving others that feeling of goodness even in just my heart, that makes me a bigger person for myself. That's even before I do anything to them. That's before I say anything to them. My teacher, Mrs. Tarshish, she uses a mashal that Chazal use, and she illustrates it. She said she went to the zoo to see that it's really true. The Mishnah in Avos tells us, better to be zanav la'arayot v'lo rosh l'shualim. Better to be the tail of a lion and not the head of a fox. So there are many particular and different reasons why you might say better to be the tail of a lion, not the head of the fox. Maybe because foxes are sly, and you don't want to be the head of sly people, and lions are great, and it's even better just to be the weakest of the great people, which is certainly pshat. But she said she heard this from somebody, and she went to the zoo to check it out. A lion walks with his head down. A fox, this is being recorded too. A fox walks with his head down. A lion walks with his tail lifted high. Great people lift up others, even the ones who are weakest in the back. Sly, mean people, even if you're among the greatest of the gang, they'll be happy to put you down when you turn around. That comes from the greatness inside. I gave a shiur yesterday, and there were a number of people who said that I didn't touch on one point, and I don't see too many people who were in the shiur yesterday. But it was an important point. I spoke about the pride of being Jewish and how Yiddishkeit is not necessarily at all racism, and that we think everybody's great in the world. And somebody came over to me afterwards, and they said to me, but what about the fact that we do find many people who really put down people who are not Jews and are not nice to them and really use it as a disparaging term when they're talking about non-Jews. I said to them the following, and that's why I think of it now. I challenge you to look at any great person in Klal Yisrael and watch them interact with a guy and see if they put them down. Because great people only pick up others, everybody. This need to put down other people, to be disparaging to other people, this comes from a psichos, says Rav Dessler, comes from a chisaron in yourself, that you need to be putting down others to lift yourself up. Hevei misunim badem, be mamtinim, wait, love Klal Yisrael, love the world, don't be fast to judge. It's impacting you, what kind of person you are in your head, and what kind of person you'll be with everybody else. And that we have to work on the v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, on that love that we should have for every member of Klal Yisrael. I don't know why that child went off and did that. I don't know why that adult went off and did that. And sometimes we hear stories, and it's astounding how much we really didn't know. And we really walked in chapter 2. And in fact, you're supposed to, when you're not done somebody l'kaf and they prove you wrong. I don't know if it's an old wives' tale, if there's a makor for it. You know what you're supposed to do? Give them a bracha. You weren't done them l'kaf. You owe them a bracha in their life. You were quick to judge them. They should have more bracha. I saw written down, actually, a transcription of a recording from Rabbi Fran's Chumash Shir. And I saw some beautiful ideas in this sense from Rabbi Fran. Rabbi Fran says that the pasuk says, again in Shoftim, that when you need something judged in Klal Yisrael, and sometimes we do need things judged, what should you do? Bas el hakohanim v'halavim vel hashoftim asher yeh biyamehem v'darashta v'gidu liros hadavar v'hamishpat. Go to the people, the judges, the wise men, the kohanim that live in your times. They'll tell you what to judge. Rashi says on this pasuk, even if whatever has just happened in the generations before, and the judges already judged on a similar situation in the generation before, you should still go to the judges in your time, as the pasuk says, Asher yihiyeh biyamehem. Go to judges that are in your time. So at least if you're going to judge somebody, we said Ad shetagia le'makomo. We said makomo is their seichel, their nefesh, their matzav, their sviva, their intellect, their attitude, their life, their surroundings. At least the pasuk says, biyamehem. Go to people who are in your times. What does that mean? The assumption is that even what they judged in a different generation for a similar scenario may be different now. So that you need somebody who is in your times to judge you. And he quotes a hesped that one of the grandchildren of Rav Henkin, Zatzala, one of the Rabbanim from Yerushalayim Hayashan, said about his grandfather. He said his grandfather was so aware and so in touch with the generations that were younger than him, even when he was old, that he was always able to judge. Because he was so in touch, so aware, so biyamehem, so in their days. And that it takes to be a judge, a true judge in Klal Yisrael. And we need people sometimes to judge. You have to be biyamehem. You have to understand their world, their time, their place. I'll share with you a beautiful personal story about Rav Pam Zatzal. My husband, as a young, earnest yeshiva bacher, was back from yeshiva and living in Lawrence, davening in the White Shul, which is the shul he incidentally grew up in. And he heard that, as commonly happens in the 5 towns, there was going to be a breakfast. And it was going to be a breakfast to benefit Shuvu, and Rav Pam Zatzal was going to be there. So even though he did not have a checkbook, and that's who the breakfasts were for, he quickly grabbed his younger brother, and they went to this breakfast because they wanted to see Harav Pam Zatzal. And when the breakfast was over, my husband somehow found Rav Pam sitting alone at a table. So he went over to him. And he asked him what was on his mind that time. He had just finished 1 year in Israel, and his parents had made him go to college that summer. And he wanted to know if he should take a certain psychology course, because the psychology might have a little bit of a connection to something that might be heretical, and blah, 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 whatever was going on in his head. And Rav Pam looked at him and he said, "I'd love to help you, but I don't know you." What a lesson. How can you even begin to criticize or advise in your own head? Forget about even speaking to somebody else, somebody who you don't know. You need to get bia mayhem. You need to get in their days, in their place, in their world. You need to understand them to even begin to touch on advising or criticizing or giving musar. Misunim, wait. Be careful. You don't know. And he ends his vart with a beautiful, beautiful thought. And he quotes Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev. He says that whenever the Gemara gets to a place that it can't answer something, that the Tanaim or Amoraim are discussing something and they can't find an answer, the Gemara says, Teiku. What is Teiku? Tishbi tirtze yisratze kushios ubayos. Tishbi will answer the questions and the challenges. Teiku is Rashi Tevos for that sentence. Who's Tishbi? Last night after Havdalah we sang about Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi. That when Eliyahu comes, all the questions that the Gemara couldn't answer, Eliyahu will answer. And Rav Levi Yitzchak, it's a little bit of a Hasidic Shavart, says, why is Eliyahu going to be able to answer all the questions of everyone ever? Why save all questions that we just don't understand for Eliyahu Hanavi? He says something beautiful. Eliyahu Hanavi, we know, is Malach HaBris. He comes to every bris, everywhere, in every country, in every place, in every generation. Eliyahu Hanavi shows up somehow, and we don't know how he does it, at every Seder, in every land, in every family, in every generation, in every place. Eliyahu Hanavi is the one who can judge everything. Why? He's been everywhere. He's been in every generation, and in every place, and in every community. And he can judge. Just another reason for us to wait for Eliyahu Hanavi. And Im Yirtzeh Hashem b'mheira yavo v'yigalenu, that he should taka come soon and bring us a geula. And until then, one of the greatest challenges facing Klal Yisrael today is something that we did not see this Shabbos at Project Inspire. But so often we see the mechitzos, the separations between this community and that community, and where you're like the this and you're like the that, and we're like the that and you're like the that. Let's take them down. Let's bring Eliyahu sooner. Let's bring Achdus into Klal Yisrael. Let's stop the judging. And it goes both ways. People judge people who they think are holier than them, and people judge people who they think are unholier than them. And it's on both sides. You're making assumptions about me, I'm making assumptions about you. Take a step back. Heve mesunim. Wait. Time will tell. Who knows what really went on before, and who knows what really will come after? Rak Hashem Yodea. Only Hashem knows ma yetze mehadavar. Only Hashem knows what really is going to come from what just happened. And I'm currently teaching, and just to end with a vart, on Megillah Esther. Perek Beis of Megillah Esther ends with a very short keta, a very small story. And that story is going to impact wildly the end of what will happen. What happens? Bigsan and Seresh are plotting to kill the king. And they're standing by the gates, and they're talking in Lashon Torsi, whatever that means. That's what Rashi says, whatever language that is. It's one of the languages that not too many people spoke in Shushan at the time. And Mordechai HaTzadik is sitting there. He sat in the Lishkas HaGazis. He was one of the Sanhedrin. He speaks all the languages. He understood it. He gets the message to Esther HaMalka. Esther HaMalka tells the king in the name of Mordechai, and we find that it is transcribed Lifnei HaMelech. It is transcribed before the king, B'Sefer HaMelech, in the book of the king. And the perek ends. Many of the Mefarshim Megillas Esther, and we know Esther is all about what's hidden, ask the questions or try to point out all the hashgacha pratis in everything. So clearly we know that one of the big hashgacha pratises in this story is that Esther says it in the name of Mordechai, and that's going to end up being the salvation will come at the point when the king remembers the good that Mordechai did. Another point that the Mefarshim bring out is that most things that might have been done for a king are not necessarily written lifnei hamelech. It was written and transcribed right in front of the king. But Rav Rivlin, one of my husband's Rabbeim from Karen B'Yavna, who has his own Sefer Megillas Esther, he says something else fantastic. He says ordinarily, most kings work cash service. You do something nice for the king, what's he going to do? He's going to pay you back right away. And yet, Vayichtov b'sefer lifnei hamelech. It's written in the book and it sits there. He says, so too melech malchei hamlachim. A lot of things are sitting in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's book. We don't know when a chesed we did 15 years ago is going to be repaid in another 10 years. We don't know how something that happened to us 5 years ago will impact what will happen in another 10. We don't know what's written. We're waiting to see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do. And I think the same midah should be with everybody. There's a sefer, and it's written, and we said when we started, and we don't know what happened in chapter 2, and we don't know what's going to happen in chapter 10. We just see the chapter that we're looking at right now in everybody. Heve mesunim. Let's wait. And in Yirtz Hashem, bimheira yavo v'yigalenu. Hashem will bring that geula very soon, and we'll see everybody doing amazing things, and we won't even have to judge. We'll see it so clearly. Yes, Mrs. Goldberg?
A practical question.
Practical question.
You know, I'm learning that Hashachayim, and it's thoughts, speech, actions. We have to control our thoughts.
Right.
How do you do that in practical?
How do you control your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, our brains are constantly
Worrying.
like things, you know? Yeah, like a stenographer, you know, like we're just going like this. How do you
But we're not. They say that Rav Wolbe Zatzal was so in control of himself, his head did not move unless he wanted it to. That's the amount of self-control that he had. So Nefesh HaChaim was Rav Chaim. Okay, so everybody on their own level. So again, and I said this earlier on, and I tell this to my students, you dress yourself a certain way, you can expect people are going to judge you. That's why we have halachos of not doing something that would cause somebody to judge poorly. At the same time, I might see someone do something or look something, and my brain is going to go that way. Chazal wouldn't spend so much time warning us not to if they didn't expect our brains to go that way. So my brain is going to go that way. My challenge is to stop it. And we know we can do that. Did you see what was put out there last night? My brain could have said, I want all of this. What are we able to do it? Some of us are able more than others, and that's our greatest tafkid in life. How much control do you have of yourself? And of course, that begins not with your actions, but it actually begins with control of thoughts. And the pasuk says in Shema, Lo sasuru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. And what did we say? Ha'adam yireh v'ainayim. Our eyes can take us anywhere. Rav Hutner says our senses can take us anywhere. Our senses are immediate. You go by a bakery, you smell the wafting smells. I don't know what communities you live in, but less and less do we have the actual bakery. We have the grocery with the bakery inside. But if you're zocheh to live somewhere where there's still a bakery, just the bakery, and you walk by the bakery and you smell the smells, so what happens? Your koach of smell is innate. It's immediate. You're not in control. You will smell it. What are you in control of? Your dimyon. Where's your head going to go? Are you going to start imagining what's in there and picturing whatever your delight might be for the day and then run in and buy it? Or you also have the koach to just stop it and shut it down. So I think that's the same. That's the same in every aspect of life. My eyes will see this person doing something that looks wrong. The question is, where will I take my imagination? You wanted to add something in the back.
I just want to say that you have a better chance of controlling if you replace it with something else. Like just shutting it down is a better
Beautiful. Thank you. So that if you could put in, so with Dan Lakas L'chuz, that is what you're supposed to do. Sometimes but there are times where you just say, I can't know, right? I can't know. There's just, it doesn't make any sense. There are times we see things and we can try, but we can't make sense of it. Then we just have to say, only Hashem is Dayan HaEmes. And we're not, and we can't be. It was a pleasure seeing all of you. We should all take our inspiration, inspire others, and Emirat Hashem, love others, and see a lot of good things and happiness in Klal Yisrael. Thank you very much.